The galaxy was a vast and dangerous place, filled with star systems, alien species, and countless civilizations. For centuries, the Galactic Empire had ruled over it all, its fleets spreading across the stars like an unstoppable storm. Every planet, every star system, had fallen under its control. The Empire's power was unmatched, and its people believed no force in the galaxy could ever challenge them. But on the edges of the known universe, in a remote part of space that no one paid attention to, there was a secret. The human race, once, thought to have been wiped out in a terrible war decades ago, was alive. Hidden deep within an uncharted sector of space, humans had managed to survive. Their numbers were small, their technology not as advanced as the Empire's, but they had something far more important: the will to fight. A small, quiet planet, nestled in a star system far from the Empire's reach, was the home of this human colony. For years, they lived in peace, keeping their existence a secret from the Empire. They rebuilt their technology, adapted and waited. And then, something happened. The Empire noticed a disturbance, a strange signal coming from the far reaches of space. At first, it was dismissed as a glitch or a random anomaly, but the Empire's spies weren't so sure. They sent a scout fleet to investigate. Captain Zareth of the Empire's Fourth Fleet stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Annihilator, staring out into the endless void of space. His fleet was a massive collection of ships, all brimming with advanced weaponry, ready to crush any threat that dared to show itself. The signal had been weak, barely even worth noting. But now, as they drew closer, the captain felt an odd unease creeping into his mind. He had learned to trust his instincts over the years, and his instincts were telling him that this mission might not be as simple as it seemed. "Captain, we're approaching the source of the signal," said his communications officer, Lieutenant. Ferris, Zareth nodded. "Bring us into position. Keep the fleet ready. I want a full scan of the area. I don't like this." The fleet moved forward cautiously but confidently. The planets they had passed had been silent and uninhabited. There was no sign of life. Zareth felt the tension in the air grow, but he pushed it aside. It was probably nothing. As they approached, the coordinates, the communication systems, suddenly came to life with a strange static noise. Lieutenant Ferris adjusted the controls, trying to decipher the signal. "It's still weak, but it's definitely a signal from a source," Ferris said, his voice tight with uncertainty. "Could it be a trap?" Zareth asked, his brow furrowed. He had faced many ambushes in his time, and he knew how easily the Empire's arrogance could be their downfall. "It's possible, sir. But there's no sign of any ships or weapons nearby," Ferris replied. "Then let's find out what it is," Zareth ordered. "Get ready to deploy a recon team." On the surface of the planet, the humans had been watching. Hidden away in underground bases, they had observed the Empire's movements for months. Their technology was old, but they had adapted and found ways to survive. And now, after years of isolation, they were ready. The leader of the human colony, General Amelia Dre, stood before a large holographic map of the galaxy. She was a strong woman, her face hardened by years of fighting and surviving. She had always known that one day the Empire would come. And now, that day had arrived. "We've detected the Empire's scout fleet approaching our system," her lieutenant Marcus Holt said from across the table. Amelia didn't react at first. She had been waiting for this moment for years. The Empire had underestimated humanity, believing them to be weak, lost, and insignificant. But the truth was far different. "We've been preparing for this," Amelia said, her voice steady and calm. "It's time to show them what we've been hiding." "We have enough ships to fight back?" Marcus asked, his eyes scanning the tactical display. Amelia smiled slightly. "We have more than enough. They won't know what hit them." Outside the command center, the sound of machinery echoed in the metal halls as the human fleet prepared for battle. Ships of all sizes, built from scavenged technology and old military designs, were getting ready to take off. The humans had not one, but several hidden fleets, well-armed, well-prepared, and ready for the coming fight. As the human forces mobilized, Captain Zareth's fleet arrived at the planet. He ordered the ships to take position in orbit, and his recon team was sent to land on the surface to investigate the signal's source. They were confident they would find nothing more than abandoned ruins. They had seen it all before. But as the recon team descended through the planet's atmosphere, they began to realize they were wrong. The planet's surface was not as empty as they had thought. There were structures, hidden deep underground, and they were not abandoned. The humans were alive, and they were ready. The recon team landed near a large, ancient-looking structure. It was nothing like the sleek, modern buildings of the Empire, but it was sturdy and well-built. The soldiers spread out, their weapons, at the ready as they approached the entrance. Inside, they found a control room, old but functional. On a large screen, the words "Galactic Empire" flashed, followed by a message in bold letters. "You've been detected. Prepare for retaliation." Before the soldiers could react, the ground shook beneath them, and the air seemed to ripple with energy. They looked up in shock as, from behind the mountains, a massive fleet of human ships appeared, rising from hidden hangars deep within the planet. These ships were old, but they were powerful, and they were ready to fight. The Empire's soldiers stood frozen, realizing that the planet they had thought was an insignificant backwater was hiding an entire fleet. It was a trap, and they had walked right into it. Back aboard the Annihilator, Captain Zareth's heart raced. He had just received the transmission from his recon team, and the message was clear. The humans were not weak. They had been hiding their strength, waiting for this moment. And now, the Empire's fleet was facing something it had never expected. A fight against a force far stronger than they could have imagined. Zareth's voice trembled slightly as he spoke to his crew. "All units, prepare for battle. The humans, they're not what we thought." The human fleet, once hidden in the shadows of the galaxy, had emerged in full force. It was a sight the Empire had never expected to see. Dozens of ships, ranging from small but nimble vessels to enormous warships, all gleaming with the power of advanced technology. These ships weren't part of the Empire's records. They had never been on any Imperial scanners. The Empire had no idea they even existed. In the skies above the human colony, the first battle began. The Empire's fleet, still recovering from the shock of seeing the hidden armada, tried to respond, but they were already behind. Their ships moved slowly, and their weapons weren't designed to deal with the kind of warfare the humans had perfected. The humans were quick, precise, and ruthless. Captain Zareth watched in disbelief from the bridge of the Annihilator as explosions lit up the void around him. His fleet was under attack. His mind raced as he tried to understand how this could be happening. The Empire's technology should have been superior. It should have been an easy victory. Yet here they were, caught in a fight they weren't prepared for. "Captain, the human ships are moving faster than expected," said Lieutenant Ferris, his voice tight with panic. "They're using some kind of advanced propulsion system we've never seen before." Zareth gripped the edge of his chair. "Deploy the full fleet. We're not losing this system. Not today." The Empire's ships began to charge their weapons. But the humans were already closing in. The Empire had numbers, but the humans had something more: strategy. They had been forced to survive for years without help, and in doing so, they had learned how to make every battle count. They knew how to use their strengths and exploit their enemies' weaknesses. General Amelia Dre stood at the command center of the human flagship, the Phoenix. Her eyes were locked on the tactical display, watching as the Empire's ships tried to regroup. The battle was already in full swing, and the Empire was losing its grip. "Fire on the lead ships," she ordered, her voice calm but filled with authority. The Phoenix's massive cannons unleashed a barrage of plasma fire, slamming into the Empire's flagship. The explosion that followed lit up the dark void, and Zareth's flagship was left drifting in space, severely damaged. "This is impossible," Zareth muttered under his breath. "We have superior firepower. How are they so strong?" The answer came quickly. The humans had an advantage that the Empire couldn't overcome: guerrilla tactics. The Empire's ships, though powerful, were bulky and slow compared to the sleek, agile human vessels. The human ships darted in and out of the battle, their weapons striking with precision before retreating before the Empire could retaliate. But the humans weren't just using speed. They had a secret weapon, an ancient form of stealth technology, salvaged from 1,000 different species. It made their ships nearly invisible to the Empire's sensors. When the humans attacked, it was as though they were ghosts, appearing out of nowhere and disappearing just as quickly. As the Phoenix continued to tear through the Empire's lines, the humans' second fleet arrived, adding more firepower to the battle. The Empire had no idea how many ships were waiting in reserve. "We've got them on the run, General," Marcus Holt, Amelia's second-in-command, said, his voice filled with excitement. Amelia nodded but didn't smile. "We've only just begun. Don't get overconfident. They'll regroup." She was right. Captain Zareth, though shocked by the human fleet's strength, was not one to give up easily. His pride, and the pride of the Empire, were at stake. He ordered a counterattack, hoping to turn the tide. "Send in the dreadnoughts," Zareth commanded. "We'll crush their small ships, push them back." The Empire's massive dreadnoughts, giant, heavily armed warships, moved into position. They were designed to obliterate anything in their path. Zareth hoped that their overwhelming firepower would be enough to break the humans' lines. But the human fleet didn't flinch. Amelia's ships began to swarm the dreadnoughts, moving in coordinated waves to disable their weapons and engines. The humans had learned the weaknesses of the Empire's ships, and they exploited them without mercy. "Target their engines," Amelia ordered. "We need to disable their dreadnoughts, not destroy them." The Phoenix and its fleet concentrated, fire on the dreadnought's engines, sending electrical pulses that disabled the ship's ability to move. One by one, the giant warships were left floating helplessly in space, unable to respond. Zareth's anger boiled over as he watched his forces being decimated. He had never experienced anything like this. In all his years of service, he had seen enemies fall before the might of the Empire's fleets. But these humans, this unexpected force, had turned the tables. They were like nothing he had ever faced. "Retreat!" Zareth barked, his voice rising with frustration. "Fall back to the system's edge. We need reinforcements." It was a humiliating order, but Zareth had no choice. The battle was lost, and the Empire's pride was crumbling before his eyes. The humans, on the other hand, had no intention of letting up. They pursued the Empire's retreating ships, continuing their attacks, forcing the Empire to flee. Back aboard the Phoenix, General Amelia Dre allowed herself a brief moment of satisfaction. They had done it. They had struck the first blow against the Empire. The humans had fought back, and they had won. But she knew this was just the beginning. The Empire would not give up easily. Zareth would return with reinforcements, and when he did, they would be ready. Amelia's eyes turned to the stars, where the Empire's remaining ships were retreating, and she hardened her resolve. "We've won this battle," she said to Marcus, "but the war is just beginning." The human fleet returned to their hidden base, where the real work would begin. They had shown the Empire their strength, but they knew they couldn't rely on surprise and guerrilla tactics forever. It was time to prepare for the long fight ahead. Meanwhile, in the Empire's command center, Zareth slammed his fist into the table. His fleet had suffered heavy losses, and he knew the next battle would be even worse. The humans had shown their hand, but he was confident the Empire could crush them if given time. He turned to his officers. "We've underestimated them." We'll bring in reinforcements from the core systems. This time, we won't be caught off guard. The battle above the human colony was over, but the war had only just begun. Captain Zareth, although humiliated by his defeat, was determined to recover. His fleet had retreated, but that didn't mean the Empire had lost. He called for reinforcements, confident that with the right support, they could crush the humans. The Empire had countless resources, and the human force, though powerful, was still small. There was no way they could withstand a full-scale invasion. Zareth's orders were clear: bring in the largest fleet available. He wasn't about to let a small human rebellion undo centuries of Imperial control. If anything, he would show the galaxy that the Empire could never be challenged. Back at the Human Command Center, General Amelia Dre stood watching the stars. The victory they had won had been hard-fought, but Amelia knew it was only the beginning. The Empire was far from defeated, and they would come back stronger. The human fleet had won the first battle, but they had no illusions about what was ahead. "We've shaken them, General," Marcus Holt said, walking into the room. His eyes were full of excitement. "They've retreated, and now the galaxy knows that we can fight back." Amelia nodded. "Yes, but we've only exposed part of our strength. The Empire will return with everything they have. We need to be ready." The news of the humans' victory spread like wildfire. Across the galaxy, whispers of their power reached even the most distant corners of the known universe. Some saw it as a sign of hope, while others were uncertain. But one thing was clear: the Empire was no longer the unstoppable force it had once been. The humans had shaken the foundation of the Empire's power. Other star systems began to take notice. For years, they had lived under the Empire's harsh rule, too afraid to resist. But now, seeing the human victory, many began to wonder if there was a chance for freedom. In secret meetings, representatives from various worlds began to discuss the possibility of an alliance. It wasn't just about fighting the Empire. It was about creating a future where tyranny no longer controlled the galaxy. But the Empire wasn't going to sit idly by. Admiral Kalen, one of the Empire's most skilled and trusted leaders, was given command of the largest fleet ever assembled. His orders were simple: destroy the human resistance and restore order to the galaxy. The Empire would not allow a small colony to defy it. "We need to crush them completely," Admiral Kalen said to his officers as they gathered in the command center aboard the dreadnought Imperium. "This is no longer about a rebellion. It's about sending a message to the galaxy that the Empire cannot and will not be challenged." The Empire's fleet began to move, its massive ships forming a wall of steel and firepower. Thousands of soldiers, millions of credits worth of warships, and a vast array of weapons were prepared for the assault. The time for patience had passed. The Empire's wrath would soon be felt across the galaxy. On the human side, General Amelia and her commanders were working tirelessly to prepare for the inevitable second wave. They had learned valuable lessons from their first victory. They had destroyed a portion of the Empire's fleet, but they knew that the full might of the Empire was still coming. "We can't win a war of attrition," Amelia said to Marcus as they surveyed their fleet's readiness. "We have to hit them fast and hard. If we let them get too comfortable, they'll overwhelm us." Marcus nodded. "So we focus on surprise. We use our stealth tech again, take them by surprise, and hit their supply lines." Amelia smiled. "Exactly. The Empire is overconfident. They think they've got everything under control. We'll make sure they know they haven't won yet." The human fleet, although small in comparison to the Empire's, was resourceful. The humans had learned how to use their surroundings to their advantage. They had scavenged technology from previous battles, combining it with their own innovations. The result was a fleet of ships unlike any the Empire had seen before, fast, stealthy, and armed with advanced weaponry that the Empire couldn't yet understand. The human fleet moved quickly through the galaxy, staying one step ahead of the Empire's forces. They hit supply depots, cut off communication lines, and sabotaged military installations. Each strike was precise, each victory a blow to the Empire's carefully laid plans. But with each successful attack, the humans drew closer to the Empire's core systems. And with that proximity came greater risks. The Empire's command structure was beginning to notice the disruption, and they were taking steps to secure their borders. The next battle, they knew, would be the one that determined the outcome of the war. Admiral Kalen's fleet finally arrived in the human-held sector. The human forces had been in hiding, watching, waiting for this moment. But they were ready. The battle lines were drawn, and the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. As the two fleets clashed in the vastness of space, the intensity of the fight was unimaginable. Explosions lit up the void as the Empire's massive ships fired their deadly lasers, while the humans weaved in and out of the battle, launching precision strikes that crippled their enemies' most powerful vessels. "Admiral, we've detected a new fleet coming in," one of Kalen's officers shouted. "It's the humans. They're hitting our supply lines again." Kalen's eyes narrowed. "They've learned to fight on their terms. But we'll show them what true power is." He ordered his fleet to regroup and focus on the incoming human ships. The humans had been using stealth technology to avoid detection, but this time, the Empire was ready. Kalen's fleet deployed their best tracking systems, designed specifically to find the human ships. Amelia's fleet was still in motion, striking from the shadows. But they knew the Empire was beginning to catch on. The element of surprise was slipping away. They needed to hit hard and fast before the Empire could fully regroup. The human ships scattered, evading the Empire's weapons with speed and agility. Their plasma cannons fired relentlessly, targeting weak points on the Empire's massive dreadnoughts. The Empire's ships retaliated, but their weapons were slower, less precise. The humans had the upper hand, at least for now. In the chaos of battle, one of the Empire's flagship dreadnoughts was hit, its engines rupturing in a brilliant explosion. The human fleet cheered, but Amelia knew that this victory, while important, wasn't enough. The Empire would send more reinforcements, and they had to be prepared. "We can't keep this up forever," Marcus said, glancing at the tactical map. "They're already bringing in more ships. If we don't end this soon, we'll be overwhelmed." Amelia's face hardened. "We won't give them that chance. We'll keep striking until they have no choice but to surrender." The battle raged on, the outcome uncertain. Both sides suffered heavy losses, but neither was willing to give up. The humans, though outnumbered, were fighting with everything they had. The Empire, though powerful, was not invincible. The tides of war were shifting. The second wave of Empire ships arrived, and the battle escalated to a new level. Admiral Kalen was determined to break the humans once and for all. The fate of the galaxy rested on this moment, and neither side would back down. As the stars burned around them, the human fleet and the Empire's forces collided in a final clash that would determine the future of the galaxy. The clash between the humans and the Empire had reached its breaking point. After weeks of skirmishes, the full scale of the war was now unfolding. The human fleet, though outnumbered and outgunned, had already dealt a major blow to the Empire's forces. Their advanced tactics, combined with their surprising resilience, had shaken the once invincible Empire to its core. But the Empire wasn't done. Admiral Kalen had arrived with reinforcements, more ships, more soldiers, and more weapons. The stakes had never been higher. Admiral Kalen stood at the command center aboard the dreadnought Imperium, watching as the battle unfolded on the holographic display. His fleet had been battered, but now, with reinforcements from the core systems, the Empire's superiority was beginning to show. The human fleet, despite its tenacity, was outmatched. The Empire's dreadnoughts and massive warships were built for destruction, and Kalen knew that with enough firepower, they would break through the human defenses. "Admiral," said one of his officers, The human ships are retreating. We've got them on the run. Kalen's lips curled into a smile. Not yet. We've got them exactly where we want them. Continue the pursuit. As his fleet pressed forward, Kalen couldn't help but feel a sense of grim satisfaction. The Empire had suffered its first losses, but the humans' small victory had only delayed the inevitable. The Empire was the greatest power in the galaxy, and no small band of rebels was going to change that. Meanwhile, on the Phoenix, General Emilia Dre was pacing back and forth in her command center. The human fleet had been moving quickly, striking at Imperial supply lines and making hit-and-run attacks. But now, as the Empire brought its full force to bear, Emilia knew that the tide of the battle was turning against them. The Empire's warships were larger, their weapons more advanced. The humans were outgunned, and no amount of strategy could overcome the Empire's superior firepower for long. "We need to regroup," Emilia said, her voice steady but filled with determination. "Our stealth tech won't last much longer against the Empire's tracking systems. We need a new plan." Marcus Holt, her second in command, nodded. "We can't keep retreating. If we give them too much space, they'll trap us. It's time to hit them where it hurts." Emilia paused, her mind racing. The Empire had underestimated the humans once, but they would not make the same mistake twice. The war had reached a turning point, and the humans needed to make their next move count. "We've been hitting their supply lines, but now it's time for a direct assault," Emilia said. "We'll hit their main fleet, take out their flagship. If we destroy their command ship, we'll throw their entire operation into chaos." Marcus frowned. "It's risky. The Dreadnought Imperium is heavily protected. We'll be outnumbered, and their defenses are stronger than anything we've faced so far." Emilia's eyes were hard as steel. "It's the only way. If we don't act now, we'll lose this war." The human fleet, though battered, was still a force to be reckoned with. Their ships were fast, and their weapons were deadly when used correctly. Emilia knew that they had the element of surprise, but it wouldn't last long. The Empire was closing in, and the time for caution was over. As the human ships prepared for the attack, Zareth's fleet had reached the heart of the battle zone. The Dreadnought Imperium led the charge, surrounded by smaller warships and fighter craft. The Empire's fleet, now bolstered by reinforcements, was a terrifying sight. Thousands of ships, each equipped with enough firepower to level entire planets, were arranged in perfect formation. Zareth stood on the bridge of the Dreadnought Imperium, watching the human ships approach. "They're not retreating," he said, a look of surprise crossing his face. "They're charging toward us." One of his officers, a young lieutenant, looked at him nervously. "Admiral, this is reckless. They're outnumbered and outgunned. We'll crush them in seconds." Zareth's face darkened. "I've learned not to underestimate them, but this time, they'll make no escape." The human fleet, led by the Phoenix, broke through the Empire's outer defenses, charging directly at the Dreadnought Imperium. The battle erupted into chaos as plasma beams and energy blasts lit up the dark void of space. The Empire's warships fired relentlessly, but the humans were quick, darting in and out of the firestorm with expert precision. Emilia's plan was simple. Take out the Dreadnought Imperium, the heart of the Empire's fleet. If they could destroy it, the rest of the Imperial forces would collapse without their command structure. She knew it was a long shot, but it was their best chance. The Phoenix locked onto the Dreadnought Imperium, firing a volley of missiles aimed at its engines. The explosion was deafening, but the ship held strong. The humans had underestimated the sheer power of the Empire's flagship. "Keep hitting their engines," Emilia shouted. "We need to cripple their movement. We can't let them escape." Buffer. Phoenix and its fleet continued to strike the Dreadnought Imperium from every angle. The Empire's flagship shook as the human weapons tore into its armor. But it was still fighting back, its guns turning toward the Phoenix. The battle between the two ships was fierce. The Dreadnought Imperium fired massive energy blasts, trying to destroy the Phoenix. but the human ship was agile, dodging most of the attacks and returning fire with precision. On the dreadnought Imperium, Admiral Zareth's patience was wearing thin. "We need to crush them now! Focus everything on that ship! Destroy the Phoenix!" Zareth's orders sent a wave of energy throughout the fleet. The Empire's warships concentrated their fire on the Phoenix, and for a moment it seemed like the human ship might fall. But Amelia wasn't going to give up that easily. "Hold steady," she ordered her crew. "This is what we've trained for. We can do this." With a sudden burst of speed, the Phoenix dodged a deadly blast and came around the side of the dreadnought Imperium. The human fleet launched a final barrage of missiles, hitting the flagship's weak point, the engines. The dreadnought Imperium shuddered violently as the missiles hit their mark. A huge explosion tore through the ship's rear, sending it spinning. Out of control. The Empire's flagship, once a symbol of power, was now crippled. "Direct hit!" one of the human officers shouted. "The dreadnought Imperium is down!" Zareth watched in horror as the flagship drifted, its engines gone, a massive fireball where its engines once were. He knew the battle was lost. His fleet was losing ground, and their command ship had been destroyed. The humans had done it. They had crippled the Empire's strongest weapon. The dreadnought Imperium slowly turned toward the edge of the battlefield, its crew desperately trying to keep the ship intact. The Empire's forces, now leaderless and scattered, began to fall back. "This isn't over!" Zareth shouted. "Regroup! We'll strike again!" But it was too late. The humans had won the battle. General Amelia Dre stood on the bridge of the Phoenix, watching as the Imperial fleet retreated into the darkness of space. Their flagship was gone, their command destroyed. The humans had proven beyond a doubt that they could defeat the Empire. The victory over the dreadnought Imperium was a turning point in the war between the humans and the Galactic Empire. The humans, once a small colony hidden in the shadows of the galaxy, had now become the symbol of resistance against the Empire's tyrannical rule. They had struck a major blow to the heart of the Empire, and the galaxy was beginning to take notice. General Amelia Dre stood on the bridge of the Phoenix, staring at the vast expanse of space. The battle was over, but the war was far from won. The human fleet had destroyed the Empire's flagship, but they had also made themselves a target. The Empire would regroup, and they would be back with even more power. "We've won the battle, but the war isn't over," Amelia said, her voice steady and calm, though her mind was racing with the possibilities. "We've shown the galaxy that the Empire is not invincible, but now we need to turn our attention to what comes next." Marcus Holt, her second-in-command, nodded. "The Empire will come after us with everything they have. We need more allies if we're going to stand a chance." Amelia sighed. She knew that the human fleet, though strong, was still small compared to the Empire's might. They had won this battle, but the Empire would bring reinforcements, and they couldn't fight alone. The time had come to seek out those who had been living under the Empire's rule for so long and convince them to join the fight for freedom. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the news of the human victory had spread quickly. Systems that had long been under the Empire's control began to stir. Whispers of rebellion were growing louder. Planets that had been silenced by fear were now beginning to ask the question, could the Empire be defeated? In a distant system on the edge of the galaxy, the leader of the Nethari, a powerful species known for their fierce warriors, watched the battle unfold from his private chamber. High Commander Vrax had seen many wars, and he knew the Empire's strength. But he had also seen the humans stand against the Empire and win. The Nethari had long been oppressed by the Empire, and Vrax knew that this was a moment of opportunity. "We cannot stand by any longer," Vrax said to his council. "The Empire has taken enough from us. If the humans can defeat them, so can we." The Nethari were not the only ones watching. The Kalith, a technologically advanced race of engineers and scientists, had been closely monitoring the battle as well. For years they had kept their distance from the Empire, quietly resisting its control. But after seeing the humans' victory, they knew it was time to act. Ambassador Aaron, the Kaleth representative to the human fleet, stood in front of the human leaders, her expression serious. "The Empire is strong, but we are not without resources," she said, her voice calm but filled with conviction. "We've built weapons, ships, and technology that can turn the tide of this war. The Kaleth will join the fight." Emilia stood and extended her hand. "Your people have suffered at the hands of the Empire for far too long. Together, we can defeat them." Aaron nodded and clasped Emilia's hand. "Together, we will." The alliance between the humans, Nathari, and Kaleth was a historic moment. Three races that had once been isolated, each struggling under the Empire's rule, had now come together with a common goal: to defeat the Empire and free the galaxy from its grasp. The galaxy was on the verge of a new era, one where the oppressed would no longer be silent. The news of the alliance spread quickly, and more systems began to rise up against the Empire. The once thought unbreakable Empire was now facing a united front. The humans had shown that resistance was possible, and now others were ready to stand alongside them. In the heart of the Empire, Emperor Zalrath, ruler of the Galactic Empire, watched as his intelligence officers reported the growing unrest. The humans had become more than just a thorn in his side. They were a movement, and it was spreading. "We must crush them before they grow too powerful," Emperor Zalrath said, his voice cold and commanding. "The galaxy belongs to the Empire, and no one, not even these humans, will take that from me." Admiral Kalen, who had been in command of the Empire's forces during the battle against the humans, bowed before the Emperor. "We will deal with them, Your Excellency. The next time, we will be prepared. The full might of the Empire will crush this rebellion once and for all." Zalrath nodded, but there was an unease in his eyes. The humans had proven to be more resourceful than he had expected, and their new alliance was a threat. The Empire would need to act quickly to destroy this growing resistance. Meanwhile, the newly formed alliance was preparing for the next phase of the war. Emilia and her commanders worked tirelessly to coordinate their forces, combining the strengths of their fleets and preparing to strike at the Empire's heart. "We've shown them what we're capable of," Marcus said, looking at the holomap of the galaxy. "But now, we need to take the fight to them. We need to hit their core systems, their command centers. If we do that, we can force them to surrender." Emilia nodded. "Our first target will be the Empire supply lines. If we cut off their resources, we can cripple their war effort. After that, we'll hit their military bases, their fleet yards, and their command centers. The time for small skirmishes is over. We need to take the fight to the heart of the Empire." First steps toward the final battle were being set in motion. The Alliance's combined forces would strike at the Empire's most vital systems. The battle for the galaxy was escalating, and the future of the galaxy would be decided in the coming days. As the new alliance prepared for their next strike, Emilia stood on the bridge of the Phoenix, watching as their fleet prepared for battle. She knew that the coming war would be the most difficult of her life. But she also knew that they were no longer alone. The galaxy was rising up, and together they would defeat the Empire. The Empire, for all its power, had underestimated humanity, and now the galaxy was paying the price. Emilia smiled as she looked at the stars. The humans had come a long way from their small colony. They had started as survivors, but now they were leaders of a movement that could change the galaxy forever. The alliance of humans, Nathari, and Kaleth had achieved more than they ever thought possible. They had struck the Empire a devastating blow, and their victory had inspired countless other systems to rise up against the Empire's cruel rule. The Empire, once a symbol of power, was now crumbling, its hold on the galaxy weakening with every passing day. But the Galactic Empire was not one to go quietly. Emperor Zalrath, despite the growing rebellion, was determined to restore the Empire to its former glory. He had learned the hard way that underestimating the humans had been his greatest mistake. This time, he would not make the same error. He would use the Empire's full might to crush the rebellion once and for all. On the bridge of the dreadnought Imperium, Admiral Kalen stood, staring at the holomap of the galaxy. His face was grim, but his resolve was unwavering. The Empire had been pushed to its limits, but it wasn't defeated yet. The humans and their allies had made great strides, but Kalen knew that their unity would soon be tested. The Empire's final gambit was in motion. "We have reinforcements coming in from the core systems," Kalen said, addressing his officers. "This time, we'll have the upper hand. The rebellion won't stand a chance." The officer at his side, Lieutenant Lyra, looked at him with a mixture of caution and hope. "But, Admiral, the alliance is growing stronger. The Kaleth and Nathari have proven to be fierce allies. How can we be sure this will work?" Kalen's eyes narrowed. "We've learned to expect the unexpected, but this time we will use our full might. We'll strike their supply lines, their strongholds, and their fleets in one swift blow. The rebellion will be shattered before they even know what hit them." Meanwhile, in the heart of the alliance, General Amelia Dre was preparing for the next phase of the war. The human fleet, along with the Nathari and Kaleth forces, had made significant progress, but they had no illusions. The Empire would not be easily defeated. The time had come for them to make their own bold move, to strike at the heart of the Empire and force the Empire to surrender. "We've crippled their supply lines, but now we need to deal the final blow," Emilia said to Marcus Holt, her second-in-command. "The Empire has been throwing everything at us. It's time to strike at their core systems." Marcus nodded, his face serious. "The Empire's strongest defenses will be in those systems. It won't be easy, but if we succeed, we can end this war." Emilia looked out the window of the Phoenix, watching as the stars blurred into streaks of light. They had come so far, but she knew the road ahead would be even more difficult. The humans had fought and survived, but the full power of the Empire was coming. "We'll need the full support of our allies," Emilia continued. "If we are to succeed, we need to make sure the Nathari and Kaleth fleets are ready for the battle ahead." The three fleets, human, Nathari, and Kaleth, were united in their goal, but each had its own strengths and weaknesses. The humans had their stealth technology and tactical genius. The Nathari brought their fierce warriors, known for their powerful combat skills and strength. The Kaleth, with their advanced technology, provided invaluable support in terms of weaponry and defense systems. Emilia's thoughts were interrupted by a message from the Nathari fleet. High Commander Vrax's voice came through the comm system, filled with determination. "General Dre, we are ready. Our ships are armed and prepared for battle. The Empire will feel the weight of our fury." Emilia's heart lifted. She had seen the strength of the Nathari in action, and their resolve was as firm as hers. With them by her side, victory was possible. "We'll strike together," Emilia said. "We hit their command centers, their military bases, and their shipyards. We take the heart of the Empire, and the rest will fall." The three fleets began their coordinated assault on the Empire's core systems. The Empire, now aware of the rebellion's growing strength, had positioned its defenses around its most valuable assets, its command centers, military bases, and shipyards. These were the heart of the Empire's war effort, and the Alliance knew that if they could cripple these key systems, the Empire would be forced to surrender. The battle was fierce from the start. The Empire's defenses were strong, but the Alliance's fleets were swift and determined. The human ships darted in and out of the firestorm, launching precise strikes against the Empire's critical infrastructure. The Nathari ships, with Their unmatched speed and power tore through the Empire's defenses, leaving a trail of destruction in their wake. The Kaleth ships, equipped with advanced weaponry, provided devastating fire support, blasting through the Empire's defenses with ease. Admiral Kalen watched as the battle raged on, his fleet taking heavy losses. But he was determined to stop the Alliance's advance. He knew that if they allowed the rebels to breach the core systems, it would be the end of the Empire. "Push forward," Kalen ordered. "We can't let them breach the command center. Hold the line!" The Empire's ships formed a defensive wall around their core systems, but the Alliance's forces were relentless. The humans, Nithari and Kaleth, were fighting with everything they had. Every ship, every soldier was determined to see this war to the end. As the battle continued, the Alliance's forces pushed closer to the Empire's command center. They were almost there. The Empire's fleet was beginning to buckle under the pressure, and Kalen knew that it wouldn't be long before they were forced to retreat. In a final desperate move, Kalen ordered his flagship, the dreadnought Imperium, to launch a direct assault on the human fleet's command ship, the Phoenix. It was a risky maneuver, but Kalen knew that if he could destroy the Phoenix, the human forces would be thrown into disarray. "We'll end this now," Kalen muttered. To himself, his eyes fixed on the Phoenix as it moved through the chaos of the battlefield. But Amelia was ready. She had anticipated Kalen's move. As the dreadnought Imperium closed in, the Phoenix unleashed a devastating barrage of firepower. The dreadnought Imperium was hit directly in its main reactor, sending shockwaves throughout the battlefield. The explosion was massive, and the Empire's flagship was torn apart. Kalen's ship, the heart of the Empire's military might, was destroyed in an instant. The tide of the battle had shifted. The Empire's forces, leaderless and disoriented, began to retreat. The Alliance's ships pressed forward, striking at the remaining Imperial defenses. Emilia stood on the bridge of the Phoenix, watching as the dreadnought Imperium exploded in the distance. The battle was won. The Empire's final gambit had failed. "Signal the fleet to regroup," Emilia ordered. "The Empire is broken. We've won." As the Alliance's ships regrouped, the reality of their victory began to sink in. The Empire, once a powerful and unstoppable force, was now in retreat. The rebellion had succeeded, but Emilia knew that the war was not truly over. The Empire would regroup, and more battles would come. But for now, the galaxy had taken its first step toward freedom. The galaxy had witnessed something unprecedented. A small human rebellion, aided by the Nithari and Kaleth, had struck at the heart of the Galactic Empire. They had crippled the Empire's fleet, destroyed its flagship, and thrown its command structure into chaos. And now, the Empire was on the retreat, its once mighty forces crumbling in the face of unity and determination from races that had been oppressed for so long. General Amelia Dre stood at the bridge of the Phoenix, staring out at the stars. Her thoughts were a mix of pride and uncertainty. The battle was won, but the war was far from over. The Empire had been humbled, but it was not yet defeated. The coming days would decide whether the galaxy would truly be free from the Empire's rule. The message of victory had spread like wildfire. Planets that had lived under the Empire's control for centuries were now rising up, inspired by the bravery of the humans and their allies. The Empire had been shattered, but it still had vast resources and powerful fleets at its command. It was clear that the war was entering a new phase, one that would be even more difficult. "We've won, but we can't stop now," Amelia said, her voice calm but filled with resolve. Her second-in-command, Marcus Holt, stood beside her. "The Empire's retreating, but they'll come back. We need to strike while they're weak, before they have time to regroup." Emilia nodded. "We've shown the galaxy that the Empire can be beaten. Now we need to make sure that the momentum continues. We need to help these planets rise up and join us in the fight for freedom." In the days following the victory, the alliance grew stronger. The Nathari and Kaleth sent their fleets to aid the humans in the next phase of the war, but the true strength of the alliance came from the people themselves. Systems that had once been silent in the face of the Empire's oppression now stood with the rebels, ready to take back their freedom. But even as the alliance expanded, the Empire was not idle. Emperor Zalrath, though shaken by the loss of his flagship, was not one to give up easily. He gathered his most loyal officers and began to plan a counterattack. The Empire would not fall because of a few defeats. It would rise again, stronger and more determined. Back on the Phoenix, Emilia and her commanders were busy coordinating with the growing alliance. The humans, Nathari and Kaleth, were working together to build a new future, one where freedom and peace would replace the Empire's cruel rule. But even as they prepared for the next phase, they knew that they would face more battles. The Empire still had vast fleets at its disposal, and Emperor Zalrath was not a leader to be taken lightly. The galaxy was in turmoil, but there was still hope. The humans had proven that even the most powerful empire could be defeated. One of the first steps toward rebuilding the galaxy came when General Emilia Dre called a summit of the newly united systems. Leaders from the freed planets, including representatives from the Netheri and Kaleth, met aboard the Phoenix to discuss the future. The council chamber was filled with voices, each representative speaking about the future they wanted to build. But as the discussions unfolded, a sense of unity began to form. For the first time in a long time, the galaxy's people were no longer living in fear. They were standing together, fighting for a new future. "We've defeated the Empire," Emilia said to the council, her voice strong and clear. "But this is just the beginning. We've shown that the galaxy can rise up against tyranny, but we need to keep moving forward. We need to build a future where no one is oppressed, where every planet, every species is free." The Nathari representative, High Commander Vrax, stood and spoke with conviction. "The Nathari have long suffered under the Empire's rule. We have seen the strength of the humans and their allies, and we stand with you. Together we will rebuild the galaxy." Aaron, the Kaleth ambassador, also spoke. "We may have been distant for years, but we are no longer isolated. The Kaleth have much to offer, and we will help you in any way we can." Emilia smiled. "Together we will ensure that the Empire can never rise again. We will build a new future for all of us." The summit was a turning point for the galaxy. The rebellion had started as a desperate fight for survival, but now it had become something more. It had become the birth of a new era, one where the people of the galaxy would have a say in their own fate. As the council discussed the next steps, word came that the Empire was gathering its remaining forces, preparing for one final stand. The time for diplomacy had passed. The rebellion was ready for the final push. But even with the strength of the new alliance, the coming battle would be difficult. The Empire had learned from its mistakes, and it was bringing everything it had to bear. This would be the fight that determined the fate of the galaxy. The Alliance's forces, now stronger than ever, began to assemble. The human fleet, along with the Nathari and Kaleth, would march toward the Empire's core systems. The final battle would take place in the heart of the Empire's territory, where the rebellion would either succeed or fail. The Phoenix led the charge, with the Nathari and Kaleth fleets following closely behind. The Empire's forces, though battered, were still formidable. But they had lost the support of the galaxy's people. The time for the Empire's rule had passed. The final battle was fierce. The Empire's defenses were strong, but the Alliance's resolve was stronger. The humans, Nathari and Kaleth, fought side by side, determined to end the Empire's reign of terror once and for all. As the battle raged on, the Phoenix and its allies pushed forward. The Empire's remaining fleet, though still powerful, was no match for the unity and strength of the Alliance. One by one, the Empire's warships fell, and the Alliance's forces advanced toward the Emperor's stronghold. In the final moments of the battle, Emperor Zalrath's flagship was struck by a direct hit, and the mighty warship exploded in a brilliant flash of light. With the Emperor's flagship destroyed, the Empire's last line of defense crumbled. The war was over. The galaxy was free. As the dust settled and the battle came to an end, General Amelia Dre stood on the bridge of the Phoenix, looking out at the stars. The galaxy had been torn apart by war, but now there was hope. The rebellion had won, and the people of the galaxy were free to rebuild. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, the galaxy had the chance to shape its own destiny. The Empire was no more, and the people were free to chart their own course. The journey was just beginning, but the victory was theirs. The galaxy had been saved by the courage and determination of those who refused to give up.